I'm Logan Webb, and you're listening to TortureCast.
You're listening to a podcast by and for fans of the three-time world champion, San Francisco Giants. With hosts Chad King and Eric Nathanson. This is TortureCast.
It's Friday, September 22nd, 2023, and this is episode 289 of the TortureCast, the podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants. I'm your host, Chad, and joining me today, and we're a little bit of a solemn mood, I'd say. This is not quite the post-mortem of the Giants season, but it's probably the pre-post-mortem episode, 289. Yeah. I'm joined by Eric Nathanson. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I feel bad for our listeners. We don't mean to be down all the time. So, at least before we dissect the season next week or after the season ends, at least we can try to look at some of the different things that happened. But still, we got to talk about where they're at. It's frustrating right now. I'm happy to be talking about it, and I'm also happy the season's ending. Let's be honest, Chad. I mean, how about you? I'm kind of happy that we're going to be done with this. This has been a slog.
I had fun at the football game last night.
Exactly.
That was a nice distraction. Yeah, I am a brand new season ticket holder to the San Francisco 49ers, and so I took my son last night for their home opener against the New York Giants. It was kind of funny. It was the Giants. And it was a great game, and it was so much fun to watch an extremely talented team with extreme talent. You know what I mean? Unbelievable. It was unbelievable. So it was so much fun to watch, and it definitely distracted me a little bit from the Dodgers game, Giants game that was going on at the time. In fact, we got back in the car, and the Giants game was on, and they had just pulled Harrison, and it was 2-2, and they were bringing in Brebbia, and my son was like, "Hey, Dad, can we listen to something else?" And I obliged his request. I mean, that's kind of sad, but it's like I was in a good mood from the Niners game, and I was like, they're tied 2-2. Something's going to happen that I won't like. So I'm going to turn the dial. And sure enough, it did.
Good instincts, because that was the best part of the game at that point.
Yeah. Then later I had to look back at the highlights, or lowlights, if you will. But, you had Tyler Fitzgerald, who was just called up. He made a good effort at that ball in right center field, but it happened to fling off his gloves, so the catcher was able to go all the way to third. And then you had Yaz on a medium fly ball. Just completely blitz out. He thought there were 2 outs, and he catches it flat-footed, and that was it.
Is that not a sign that these guys are kind of checked out? I mean, is that not a sign that they know that it's over?
Total checkout maneuver. He was embarrassed. He took accountability, all that stuff. But it's in the moment you realize some of these guys have checked out, and it's pretty apparent in their play. So now, here we are. We haven't, gotten together here in a couple of weeks, but we knew that their playoff chances they weren't on life support, but the chances were low. They were like at 14%, and they really had to go into Colorado and Arizona and take care of business. And man, they did the exact opposite, Eric. They lost 3 out of 4 in Colorado, whom they had just manhandled for the last 3 years, basically, and then lost both in Arizona. And that was pretty much the nail in the coffin. Yeah, mathematically, I hear Giants fans saying there's still a chance because they were 5 back with 10 to play in 2010. But that was one team. Remember, everyone? They got to pass 3 teams right now. It's just, okay, it's not going to happen. Not to mention they're playing nothing but the Dodgers and the Giants, or the Dodgers and the Padres. But the problem is, playoffs, we don't even want to talk about that anymore because we know that ship has sailed. The Giants are now...
Playoffs?
Yeah, playoffs? You talking about playoffs? But now they are officially 1 game under 500, and that was that level of mediocrity that you were hoping they weren't going to submerge under, and in fact they have. We were worried about it, talking last podcast, going like, it is possible for them to finish below 500, but I don't know. They really have to. Oh yeah, no, they did. They took care of that. They put no doubt in our minds that they can and truly are underachievers in the second half of this season. I mean, let's look back. The Giants were 13 games above 500, 2.5 games behind the Dodgers in July.
Yeah.
What? And here they are, 3 games out of the wild card, again, with 3 teams to pass and 9 games to play. It's not going to happen. They're a game under 500, and I'm finding trouble isolating just one variable, right? Because there's many things wrong with this team, many deficiencies on this team. So you can't just point to one, but the amalgamation of poor hitting, poor timely hitting, poor defense, all of those things, forgetting how many outs there are in the outfield, no speed whatsoever on the team, all of those things combined have contributed to what I think is it's really almost an unbelievable number on how poor their road record has been in the second half. In fact, in their last 31 road games, they've only won 5.
Right.
That's their worst stretch since 1902. So what else do you need to know? I don't know. I mean, their home record, they're still above 500 at home. They have been playing poorly at home overall, but still okay. If they had been even 10 games under 500 on the road in that stretch, do you realize that? They could have been playing that poorly, 10 games under 500, and they would be in a wild card spot right now, almost guaranteed to be in the playoffs. And I'm not even asking for 500 ball on the road in that stretch. I'm asking for 10 games under 500, and they still couldn't achieve that. I mean, this team could have almost backed into the playoffs from where they were. And then once they had a 5-game lead in the wild card division too. I don't know. It's Gabe can't put a finger on it. The players can't understand why their road record is so poor. Mike Krukow was talking about it yesterday, and he's just completely flummoxed about it. He's never seen a team just suddenly forget how to play on the road. And in fact, he said that he knows the Giants. They're super analytical, as we know. They really believe in their sleep science and sports psychology. They adjust travel for sleep patterns, all sorts of crazy stuff like that. And he said there's no doubt in his mind they're going to go that deep into all the analytics. What can we do to help these players out? I don't know if that had that much of effect on, because they already tried to make it an optimal situation for all the players and coaches, right? So if you were already focusing on those elements and their road record just suddenly tanks, I don't think that's the solution. I don't know if it's fatigue, if it's players checking out. I don't know if people just couldn't sustain their level of performance. The rookies couldn't keep up that level. The veterans couldn't keep up that level. And they didn't change anything. I think that's the other thing. There was no strategy change. There was just like, we're just going to keep switching players. We're going to play the numbers. We're going to play the matchups. And that's what the Giants have always done since, Kapler and Zaidi have come into power. And I don't know. I can't put my finger on one thing.
Well, here's something that highlights that very much, and it highlights the Giants' approach. I saw this the other day, and it really, really bothered me because it just I have a tough time of an organization and players thinking like this. Austin Slater was pointed out to him the other day that they were 5-23 on the road, since the All-Star break, 179 winning percentage. At that time, it's gotten worse. And Austin Slater said, I saw that stat, and honestly, I started laughing. I thought it was encouraging how close we were and how bad we've been on the road. I believe in the law of averages. If we've been that bad recently, it's bound to swing back our way at some point, because that's not the kind of team we are, and we're much better than that. And I am so frustrated in hearing that. So all he's saying is, we're just going to rest on our laurels and the idea that it'll swing around. We're not going to say we didn't play well. We're not going to say we need improvement. We're not going to say we're embarrassed. No, we trust the law of averages. And it's such a Farhan Gabe type approach. And I get that crap out of here. I don't want to hear that. I started laughing at how bad we've been on the road. How about I'm embarrassed and my teammates are embarrassed and we want to do better? And I think it just highlights what the team mentality and approach is. And that's what's going to make the next off season or the next year, very interesting transition to see which direction it goes. But there's nowhere to pinpoint what it is. Like you said, they're going to deep dive on the study of this and that. I'm sorry, but if you find that the changing the sleep by half an hour and this and that gains you a maybe 0.05% better chance, then maybe you'll go 6-25 instead of 5-26. I mean,
Right.
It's just one of the. It's I can't see that you're going to gain an advantage. The bottom line is you need to play better. And when the players that you have signed to play better go down with injuries, at least have capable replacement players behind them and not have to constantly shuffle the deck. And I think this Giants season is just a combination of all the previous years of Farhan's regime and Gabe's regime just coming together. 107 was an anomaly. We all see that now. And so I think we're starting to see what happens when things fall apart. I mean, Patrick Bailey was the best of the young kids, but you're right, none of the veterans really came through this year. Wilmer, again, the most consistent player on the team. You have to wonder, if Yaz had been healthy or if Haniger had been healthy. But yeah, those guys have shown to be injury prone over the years. So why not get them some help? Why not surround them with some better players? You're jerking the pitching staff around. You got Alex Wood grumbling all the time. I can't imagine all the guys are happy with their roles. So it's just the combination of everything. It's the team approach, the team talent, the schedule, and just the situation they're in. Because, like you said, I couldn't imagine when they were ahead in the NL West that they'd end up under 500 again in September. I did think they'd have a tough time sustaining the success that they had, but I did not think it would be this bad. And I'm embarrassed as a Giants fan. I said it to you pre-show. There's a tweet going around. Imagine being a Chicago Bears and a San Francisco Giants fan right now, and that's how I feel. It's the worst feeling in the world. We got my football team, don't even get me started there. That's a mess, the quarterback, the defensive coordinator. But then the baseball team, you've got some players grumbling. You've got a team that can't stay healthy. That's boring. That's unwatchable. That is basically getting turned on by the local media at this point. And it's not just the local media, which we'll touch on in a few, but everybody's turning on them at this point. And the articles are starting to come out. The thoughts are starting to come out. Are Farhan and Gabe on the hot seat? Is this collapse something that could lead to a firing? And again, we'll talk about that after the season ends. But I think it's a fair question to ask at this point because the expectations for what this team were and the reality of what they are miles apart.
Miles apart. And I think a lot of the national writers, of course, local writers always have a different prism through which they look at the Giants. But national writers usually can be fairly objective from that 30,000-foot view. But this article that came out a few days ago by Tom Verducci on Sports Illustrated, I think he did a good job encompassing a lot of the frustrations and a lot of the characteristics of this team that not only makes them maybe more successful than they would be without certain matchup play, but also points to the deficiencies and how boring it is, right? I do think in reality, look, I'm not sitting here fire Farhan, fire Kapler. I'm not in that camp yet. Like a lot of very vocal Giants fans are and have been actually for quite some time, in the order of 2 years, basically 3 years of barking this out, whether it be political, which is definitely some of the fan base. It's all about politics, whether it be your old timers who just can't stand, analytical ball. Oh, they're going to let the computer decide the game. I could manage better. To people who have some really coherent, logical thoughts that are like, look, maybe it is time for a move. Maybe this 5-year experiment has run its course and Giants ownership has to just say, look, we like the guys. They're smart people. They have IQs of 180, but it ain't working. We got to change it up, right? So I don't know what it's going to be. But Tom Verducci does a great job here, and I'll call out some of the things in the article here. But, this was written a few days ago when they still were more mathematically in the race. So please, give it that kind of angle. But he says, with a poor offense and middling pitching, the Giants are in the thick, not anymore, of the NL wildcard race with a dozen games left in their season. See, this is just 3 games ago. Beginning with huge games the next 2 nights at the Diamondbacks. They both lost. How they've done it is a credit to roster efficiency. So he is pointing out, they are getting a lot out of a really weak roster, plain and simple, right? To even be in the playoff hunt with what is on paper a demonstrably poor team with not very good players, they have a lot of depth that other teams don't have. But if this is the future of baseball, he goes on to continue here, I want no part of it. The Giants are interesting in the way mutual funds are interesting. They are smart, efficient, and lackluster. I mean, geez, that's
That
pretty
nailed it
bad
though.
right now. Yeah, no,
It's
that
so
nailed it
nailed
right
it.
now. Oh, it's so bad. Start with how the Giants treat starting pitching. San Francisco does give the ball these next two games to Cobb and Webb, which means they can play a more traditional game with starters that might actually have a mathematical chance of winning the game. That's the exception to the San Francisco way. And of course, it ended up not working out. The Giants throw an average of just 72 pitches per game, the shortest leash in the MLB. I mean,
Wait.
we
Let me
kind of knew
stop for a
that.
second. Do you remember when we were all like, the Giants are 12-4 and 12-3
Yeah.
with an opener, and this is working, and that's something. Just kind of to circle back to the point about what went wrong. We talked about it on this show a couple months ago. How the pitching had been sustaining them and had been phenomenal when the offense had been bad, and at some
Yeah.
point the pitching is going to blow out a tire. And over the last few weeks, that's exactly what's happened. Sorry.
No, no worries. He goes on to say, with all those truncated starts, Giant starters are deployed to avoid losing the game, not to win it. I think that's another crucial statement right there. They are 27-45, an unfathomable rotation record for a team in contention in the last 2 weeks of the season. The worst rotation winning percentage by a playoff team is .464 by the 2005 Padres. Now, of course, you pile on Cobb and Webb. They're 27-47 now. Even worse. Accepting the
Yeah.
60-game season of 2020, Giant starters this year will likely set a 141-year franchise low for wins. That was the 1984 rotation, went 36-63. So yeah, they're 9 games left, and they're 9 games below that mark. So there you go, right there. The Giants are going to have fewer starter wins than any other year in their franchise history.
All right. Here's
That
a
is
quick
crazy.
trivia question for you. Behind Logan Webb and Alex Cobb, who has made the third most starts this season?
Oh God. I don't know, Russ Stripling.
That's a good guess. He's got 11. Anthony DeSclafani had 18 starts this season for the Giants.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, before he went on the shelf. That makes sense. That
And
does.
then
That does.
Ryan Walker with 12. Ryan Walker.
Ryan Walker. Yeah.
Yep. Brebbia started
There you
8
go.
times. Alexander started 8 times. Jacob Junis started 4 times. So they deployed the opener a whole lot.
Yeah. He does point out that this is not just the Giants about not having 200, innings in a year or 20 wins in the year. It says right here, the Rays built a playoff team by letting their starters throw 100 pitches just 7 times all year. The Dodgers' entire staff has thrown 100 pitches just 13 times. Clayton Kershaw did that by himself in 2015 by the end of July. Okay, so it is a trend in all of baseball to protect your starters. So it's not just the Giants. The Giants just take it to that extreme. The number of qualified pitchers has been cut in half just since 2011, from 93 to 46. The fewer innings, the fewer wins, the fewer wins, the fewer starts. At the All-Star game this year, for instance, of the 20 pitchers who paraded to the mound, only one, Garrett Cole, was a starter who ever received one first-place Cy Young Award vote. Until 2018, the Giants had only one season with just one qualified pitcher, and that was in 2003. This year, with only Webb qualified, it will mark just the third time in just the past 6 seasons with only one qualified starter.
And he leads the league in innings pitched. He's got
That's
207 innings pitched, and Cole's at 200.
That's the paradox about this, right?
It's so weird.
He's kind of the outlier in the Giants' methodology. But then you think, oh, well, he should be winning, right? Well, I mean, the Giants have lost so many of his games. In fact, I have it somewhere here, but they're under 500 in Logan Webb starts. And he's having a pretty decent year. So it kind of doesn't make any sense, you know?
Well, he's also a holdover, if you think about it, though.
Yeah.
He's a holdover from the previous regime. Everybody else built around him has been come in from the Farhan Kapler tree. But Webb's kind of a throwback because he's a holdover. I have to wonder, if Webb had come up through the system when Farhan and Gabe were here, would he be throwing 6 innings a night instead of 7, 8, sometimes 9?
Mm-hmm. The San
So
Francisco
I think they would
offense,
have screwed with him, yeah.
the offense uses a similar gig methodology, split the work among many. You can do this when you don't have star players. Kapler never has used the same lineup more than 4 times. He has used 13 players in the number 3 spot, including a different one every game in a 4-game series over the weekend in Colorado. For the 5th time in the past 7 seasons, the Giants will not have a player with 80 RBI. It's not an entertaining offense. San Francisco ranks 15th in walks, 19th in homers, 25th in strikeouts, 21st in runs per game, and 30th in stolen bases. That's dead last, by the way. Only the Yankees and White Sox have a lower average sprint speed than the Giants. What do they do well? Well, matchup baseball. No team has sent more pinch hitters to the plate than the Giants. They are 7th best in the majors at winning the platoon advantage on offense and 4th best at winning it on defense. Sorry, but that's not something the ad department can work with when it comes to selling tickets. So
I mean, it can.
It can. And I think this is what I think a lot of fans miss a little bit. And again, I'm not an apologist for those two. I'm also not trying to pile on, because it's stats like this that show that matchup baseball, they do very well at, meaning they're squeezing more wins out of this roster than if they did it in a traditional sense. So in a way, they're kind of doing the best with what they got, right? And that is not Cap's fault per se, but that certainly is ownership and management. They're the ones that have to acquire the players and develop the players, right? Cap puts the guys on the field, and those strategic decisions is squeezing extra wins out of that roster. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. I'm not saying if you put Bruce Bochy back in there or manager X that they would be 10 games worse. I do think they would be a little bit worse. I don't think they would be any better playing your traditional ball, because you don't have your traditional players on this roster. It's not constructed that way.
Yeah, it blows my mind that I agree with you. I have not liked Kapler. You know, Willie has definitely noted that quite a few times here. And I think this season has brought me to realize it's not Kapler that I dislike. It's the approach in general. As you say, Kapler's not the problem this year. The talent is just not there. The roster construction is just not there. Like, he's had 141 different lineups in 153 games, which is just amazing. So there's no consistency, you know. But it is a problem when you are batting 13 different guys in the 3-hole. But on the flip side, what choice has he had, like you said? Which is why I haven't been knee-jerk to say, let's get rid of Kapler. You know, I think the problems are higher than him. I really do. I don't think he's costing them games. I'm with you on that. I really am. I think it's the talent level. I think it's the roster construction. I think it's this whole treating players as if they're just cogs in the machine, and he seems to be the perfect guy for that. Because, I mean, he's still blowing out a bunch of bullshit at this point. You know, yesterday, he's like, you know, well, you know, at some point we're going to have to sit down with Haniger and have that talk about how the young kids are. At some point, there's 10 games left in the season. Like, just turn it off for once, man. You know, so I don't blame him necessarily. I really can't. I can't. You know, nobody, like you said, Bruce Bochy is not going to suddenly win 90 games with this roster. You know,
No.
Casey Stengel, you know, is not going to. John McGraw is not going to pull that out of this team. It's just not going to happen. So that's why I'm all about giving Gabe another chance next year. I really am. Do I think it's going to work out? No, I really don't. Do I think it's going to work out with Farhan after another year? No, I don't. I hate to be this negative, and I'm going to pivot away and save it for the offseason. But do I think getting rid of Gabe specifically is the answer? It isn't. You're right. He's milking what he can out of this team. He's doing what is asked of him, and I'm sure the players know this as well. And, you know, you hear it from guys all the time. I'm playing for the guy next to me. You know, Alex Wood, even when he was grumbling, was saying, I'm going to throw my heart on that field for the guys around me because that's what's important. And I have a feeling Gabe's kind of included in that little circle with them. And they just figure he's just kind of part of it. Yes, he comes down with the directives, but he's not pulling the strings. And I think the players know it. And that's probably another reason why they're not responding, because it's hard to respond to the authority when you don't treat them like an authority figure. So I think it's just one of those endless combinations of things that have gone wrong with the team this year. But like you, I can't blame Gabe. I can't. He'll make dumbass decisions, and but I can't even blame him for roster construction. I 100% assume Farhan is in on these kind of talks. So, I mean, no way Wilmer Flores should have 41 starts in the number 3 hole, and that's the most this year.
Yeah.
That's just not good roster construction when that's your best. You remember at the end of last year in the offseason, Wilmer signed a 2-year deal, and we're like, oh, that's great. We've got bench depth. Now they can go build.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe go after Correa or Swanson or somebody. Get that infield depth built up. And here we are again a year later, second year in a row. Wilmer Flores is the most consistent player on the team. So there's absolutely a problem there, but I don't think it's Kapler. I think Kapler will go out with the wash if Farhan does, but I don't think Farhan's going to send him packing. I just don't. Unless ownership puts pressure on Farhan, that's too great. And I don't know how much of that. I don't know where the give and take is there.
Verducci goes on to call out the attendance issue because he says, quote, "The new rules have made baseball a faster, more athletic, and more risk-taking game this year. With their lack of speed and star power, the Giants missed that train. They also missed the attendance boost that accompanies that excitement. The Giants are one of only 5 teams not to get an attendance increase this year. Only the Nationals and the White Sox, both non-contenders all year, have seen a bigger drop. The Giants have lost 26% of their paying customers since 2016, their last winning team without COVID restrictions." And that's another big tell too, is the people are not coming. The fans are not coming. I mean, let's take that line out of Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. Well, you didn't build it, so they're not coming.
Yeah, there was a Monday night game against Cleveland, 20,705. Tuesday night against Cleveland, 23,541. Whereas you go to Saturday night in Colorado, 43,000. Oh, I'm sorry. You go to a Thursday night in LA, 44,000 people in attendance. More than double what the Giants are drawing. I mean, even against Cincinnati, a team that were fighting in the playoff race, 24K, 26K, 25K. And that's a good note from Verducci, and it goes back to what is ownership going to think about that, Can you believe that? We're one of the 4 teams to decrease in attendance, or 5 teams. That's ridiculous.
He goes on to say that the 107-win season does look like an outlier. The team has played 500 baseball in the 2 years since and 1 season prior. Zaidi has not signed a free agent for more than $44 million that went to Carlos Rodon, who opted out of the first of his 2 seasons. Now I'm just going to say on the side, look what happened this year in New York. So that would have been a disaster. The team collective bargaining 40-man payroll figure dropped from 3rd in 2018 to 13th this year. But he also says give credit to the Giants for at least thinking big. They bid for Aaron Judge, and they briefly had an agreement with Carlos Correa before the medicals ended. And they're likely to bid strongly for Shohei Ohtani this offseason, though they appear to be outside of the top 3 teams of most likely options to fit Ohtani. So, I mean, I know we've been harping on this whole free agent thing. The Giants haven't been able to land that big fish for quite some time. They really did put all that money out there for Judge, but he was just using him as a pawn. Correa and his medicals. But again, look what happened to both of those players this year, right? I mean, Judge has been on the shelf for a huge portion of the season, and Correa has been just absolute crap. So, in a way, the Giants avoided those bullets as well. So that's something that Zaidi would point to. I'm not saying that's a reason to always avoid the free agents, but it is a reason to be cautious in some of these huge deals. So,
but still,
you win some and you lose some.
Verducci there, I mean, that's quite a statement. Well, at least the Giants are trying. Yeah. I once went to a $10,000 poker tournament, and I tried, and I had dreams that I was going to win it all, and in the end, it didn't happen. I think the facts and the results are going to matter way more than, well, they tried. And,
it's like that
just
Bart Simpson cake, right? At least you tried,
yes.
And shoves it in the garbage can. Yeah, I know.
Right?
I know. Oh,
I'm sorry. I can't give them credit for that. I think Verducci just realized it was such a hit piece that he had to kind of swing back a little bit the other way to not, completely eviscerate the Giants at that point. That was a fascinating article. Had a lot of discussion.
No, and he ends it with, the overall numbers tell you there's no way the Giants should be here. But here they are, and they have a real shot at seizing a playoff spot. Again, this is written 3 games ago. Especially with 2 or 3 tiebreakers in their favor. It may not be exciting, but it is a credit to Zaidi and Kapler and the way they have run this mutual fund of a baseball team. So objectively, again, he's pointing out that I'm losing faith in Zaidi at this point, but Kapler and the way it's been run, they have squeezed all the blood out of the stone that they can, but it doesn't mean it's exciting. That's not a reason to be proud of this team. It's not a reason to be a fan of this team. It's like, yeah, They're really efficient at their matchups. That's why I'm a fan. I go to watch the analytics. I want to see my 50-second lineup today.
Right?
Ugh.
Well, I mean, it's the difference of, and he's right. Like, watching the Giants is like hoping for that .01 appreciated interest on something over a year instead of shoving $20 into a slot machine and hoping that it pays off.
Yeah.
And a lot of other teams have shoved that $20 in the slot machine and it's paying off. Look at Baltimore this year. And the Giants are just like, no, we just want to get incrementally better and show on paper we've got improvement. And then they can't do that.
They're playing the nickel slots or the $5 limit hold'em tournament or something. They're
exactly.
They're at the small stakes table and they're afraid to go big on it. And look, I know we've been on this a little bit, and we'll save more for kind of the postmortem of the season, but that was kind of the national view. So it was a nice objective view of like, look, what they're doing is objectively efficient and commendable, but this isn't exciting baseball, and this can only last for so long. Look how their attendance has dropped. Look at this, look at this, look at this. Then you have your local guys, and these are some of your biggest homers of the Giants, and they are turning fast. And so this is from 95.7 The Game, Willard and Dibbs. They're on weekdays. And so this is about a minute of Willard kind of going off. And I actually have always liked him. He's always been kind of even keel, if you will, but even he's starting to lose patience.
It's are 2 years removed from a Manager of the Year award. Now,
that's a long 2 years, kid.
Right. I also should be made fun of for the fact that I thought that it was highly likely that this was a playoff team.
Yeah, boy.
And if you look at them since July,
egg meat face.
This is disgusting baseball.
Get him, Mark.
It's gross. It's terrible baseball. Not just because it's boring. There's not one thing that they're doing well. You want me to keep going?
This is good.
You don't play defense well. You don't hit the ball well. You don't pitch the ball well. You don't pitch the ball long. You don't pitch the ball short. You don't have relievers you can rely on. And you only starters you can rely on get no run support. What do you do well? You cannot be good at anything in life if you can't answer that question. What do you do well? It's been 2.5 months. I haven't done anything well. Clip. Go ahead. There you go.
And that was nice.
Yeah.
He ain't wrong.
He ain't wrong. Yeah, I listened to that, and I'm like, man, for a guy who's been pretty even-keeled and behind Farhan and Kapler, even he's like, all right, I got to call it what it is, man. This is boring baseball. This is terrible baseball. It's just sad, Eric. I really thought our preseason predictions, actually, I went back pre-show and looked at them. They weren't super lofty, but they certainly are lofty compared to where they're headed. I had the low of the group with 85 wins. You were at 88. Steve was at 88 or 89. But Vegas was at 81.5. So it looks like Vegas might even be overshooting it a little bit, because now this team is under 500 and quite likely will finish the season with 70-something wins. It's just sad. It's just sad to see how far this team has dropped. And I know Kapler and Zaidi, according to Charles Johnson, the majority owner, they are coming back for 2024, so we are going to see them for one more season. And again, we'll put a pin in it for the offseason. How long of a leash is ownership going to have? Does it extend a full year? Do they start April and May, just like crap, and they get canned then? I mean, like, this is really going to be interesting, because at some point the Giants ownership has to take notice. They have to take notice of the attendance drop. They have to take a notice of the social media and the media articles from mainstream writers. Like, at some point they got to be embarrassed about their product. But I will say, on the flip side, much like the Oakland A's owner, a lot of times the owners don't really care. They just say, what, am I in the black? Am I gaining value? Yes, yes, and yes. Meh, I'm good with where we are.
Well, I think one of the things that we'll see is, and we have to consider here, is, yes, we keep saying, we'll put a pin in and we expect Farhan and Gabe and all that stuff, but just quickly, would you consider the possibility, and then we'll move on to a couple other things. Would you consider the possibility that if the Giants over their last, 7 games have gone 1-6. So if somehow over their last 7 games, no, I'm sorry, 1-6. If somehow over their last 16 games they go say 2-14 or 3-13, and it's a collapse of epic proportions from being a contender to missing the playoffs by a week. I mean, is there a possibility? Is there a slight possibility that ownership is like, I am not happy with the way this ended, and they clean house? I mean, that's something I think we're going to have to consider if they really just keep crapping the bed against the Dodgers and the Padres. I mean, I'd be embarrassed if I was ownership if my team won like 2 of the final 16 or 3 of the final 16 games. So I think we have to consider that if they get even worse here over the last week and a half, that Gabe and Farhan's jobs might be in jeopardy at that point. But other than that, they're not in jeopardy. And like you said, that's what we're going to be talking about this offseason is how long is the leash? When do you give up? How long do you take it? Who do you, because, again, we'll talk about it, but you got to kind of give Farhan's farm system a chance one more year. So there's all those other factors in it. But the results on the field suck right now, and that's really where the focus is.
Yeah, no, it's a shame, and I don't think a change would be made even if they lost the remaining games, all of them. I still don't think a change would be made because then it'd be like, oh, you guys are jumping the gun. And it was just the last week of the season, the last 2 weeks of the season. But, yeah, we'll see. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I don't want them, they've already fallen on their face, but I don't want their face to skid across the pavement, to end the season.
Yes, exactly.
Really leave a sour taste in all of our mouths that would be more sour than it is right now. All right, well, let's take a little bit look back at the players themselves, and of course he had some call-ups this week. It's good to see Tyler Fitzgerald come up. Luciano's going to be coming up, or has come up, and he's going to be taking probably the majority of reps at shortstop because Brandon Crawford went on the IL for the 4th time this year in, unfortunately, his statistically worst season of his career. And what's really odd about this is that he's going to be eligible to come off the IL for the very last game of the season, October 1st, against the Dodgers at Oracle Park. And everyone is already pointing to it, and they've even asked Gabe and Crawford about it himself. First of all, Crawford has said he still doesn't know what he's doing after this season. I'm sure he's going to have a discussion with his family, himself, and the Giants to see what options there are if he wants to play again. And if he wants to just hang it up, right? We don't know what's going to happen there. But what we do know is that he could come off the bench or start and get pulled later, much like Giants in the past have done on that final game October 1st. And Kapler has even said, I hope he's out there for that final game. And then you had, I thought this was interesting, came across Twitter last night. Brandon Crawford's mom has an account, Mama Craw 35. And she retweeted or quoted an MLB.com article that was titled, "Sidelined Again, Crawford Aims to Play Finale." And she put up here, little crying emoji, "I hope the stadium is filled on October 1st.
Oh.
And so even Brandon's mama is like recognizing the writing could be on the wall here. And this could be the send-off, right? For that last connection to the championship teams, to probably the last player we're going to see for quite some time that wore a Giants uniform their entire career. And, of course, grew up a Giants fan. We all know the story there. So, personally, of course, we knew this day was coming at some point. It just really sucked to see him have just such an awful year, batting 197. His defense has been suspect because of his, range and his injuries and everything else. It's the product of an aging body. This happens. It's not, quote, his fault. It's just nature taking its course. But it's quite likely that he'll play that final game and get pulled out somewhere in the middle of the game by Kapler so he can get his proper kind of standing ovation from the fans. And then we'll see what happens in the offseason. But it's just I don't like to see it happen, Eric.
No. It's kind of heartbreaking that this is how Crawford's Giants career is going to come to an end. I don't think he's going to play anymore. You mentioned he definitely looks like a guy who's past his prime And I think this year probably really hammered that point home for him. He did play shortstop at a high level 2 years ago, but that was it. And he was a very big part of that 2021 club. It's those 2 titles out of 3 years. It's the last link that we have. I really hope. I don't remember what the sign said, but I really hope that fans come to the park on the final day of the season with signs, just like Brandon was holding when that picture was snapped. Please don't move the Giants or whatever it was. I'd have to find that. So it'd be great to see a bunch of fans copy that and put it out there. I hope they do. I hope October 1st is all about him. Pablo came back and was able to get in at bat in a late September game. I remember when it was his last time. Hunter came back through the club, but I don't think he really got that kind of a send off. But it's good. It'll be good for Crawford, and we're gonna miss the crap out of him because he's what the Giants are. That's what we've known, and so it's a little scary, I guess, to say, to know that we're going to be traveling the waters without him anymore. It was nice to have him anchoring that shortstop position. You knew what you could expect from him. He was a 250 hitter. He's going to hit you like 10 to 15 bombs a year, maybe 20. He was going to drive in runs sometimes. He could come through in the clutch, and then his defense was there. He had an arm, a cannon for an arm that obviously has lost a couple miles an hour on the fastball, but he had good range. He could make that backhand play, plant the foot in the ground and fire across the diamonds just about as good as any shortstop when he was in his prime. And he was a very big part of why those Giants won those titles. You can't win titles without being strong up the middle. And he was really, really a big part of that. So I really hope October 1st is Brandon Crawford Day. And I can't wait for him to be on the wall. I can't wait for him to get all his accolades, all his flowers. It's a shame this year went as rough as it did. I think he was on the IL 4 times you said this year? I think that matches the time he was on the IL like the rest of his career, or at least comes close. So it's tough when your body breaks down, but he's shown signs. It's not like a guy who's just suddenly going to decide to walk away. The game has kind of told him that it's time. So I appreciate everything you've done. I really have. And it makes me wonder, and I'm not trying to segue, but it does make me wonder. Somebody brought this up in the chat. Does Craw take home the Willie Mack this year? Does, Alex Cobb, does Logan Webb, do they try to give those nods to it? Or, is it Wilmer Flores again? It's funny because Craw is going to go out that weekend. So you got to figure it's a weekend of celebration because the season's over and we got nothing left. So, I just wonder, but I'm going to miss Craw, just everything about him. DJ, humor, his 18 million kids, his wife, his social media presence, everything about him. I'm going to miss Brandon Crawford. I hope Crawford has made some money and stays with the Giants. That's all I'm hoping for.
You know what? I think he's a humble enough man to accept a role position. Well, let's be honest. Most of the Giants are role players. But remember we were talking about the beginning of the season, how he was going to have to play third for Correa, right? And here we are. Now it's like he might have to be a backup or a role player for a Luciano or a Casey Schmidt or something, right? So, look, I hope the Giants and him have that conversation, and maybe he's willing to do it. Maybe he does it a little different condition in the offseason to try and help lower some of these injuries he's prone to. And they're all different injuries, by the way. It was never the same one. I read the whole list, and they were always a different body part and a different muscle group. It's like, it wasn't like, oh, that knee keeps flaring up like a Brandon Belt knee, right? It was different every time. This was a hammy. He's had a right calf. He's had a left shoulder. And then the other one was a right elbow, I think, or right forearm. I'm like, my God, it's all over the place. It's like, so maybe that's a good thing in the sense like, they were one-time injuries, or maybe it's just because his body's breaking down everywhere. He's just more prone to injuries no matter what he does. I would like to see him come back in a veteran role for, 1 year or something like that, because let's be honest, you look at the way, again, this roster is constructed, and, Casey Schmidt's hitting a $150, right? Luciano is a prize prospect, but hasn't really done anything in the major leagues. There's a lot of these rookies that just, they haven't exceeded Brandon Crawford's poor statistics this year, right? And if you have him on the team, he could certainly provide that mentorship role and to fill in when needed. just like a lot of the Giants do anyway, with that revolving door of minor leaguers. So I don't see it as a bad thing. But I know some people just want to move on, cut bait and go. He's not your typical player. He's a special player with, the most games at shortstop in Giants franchise history. I mean, there's a reason to keep him around, but I don't know if it's going to happen. As far as the Willie Mack Award, though, I could see it being given to him kind of as a last-minute parting gift, which is maybe that's cheesy, maybe that's not sincere enough. But, you have had players win multiple Willie Mack Awards. Benji Molina won it back-to-back in 07 and 08. JT Snow won it twice, right? So you have examples of this. So it's not like you can only win it one time. Crawford did win it in 2016. He shared the award with Javier Lopez. So it's been done. So
none of his teammates were around 7 years ago, though. So
that's a good point.
And they're the ones doing the majority of the voting. I threw this in there at the end of the show just so we could think something positive about the season. Who wins the Willie Mack? But the more we're talking about Brandon Crawford, the more I think it's just going to be Brandon Crawford. I really do. Fought through injuries and adversity, yada, yada, that kind of crap. But, you wonder, do his teammates think that way too? But they probably do, because they all look to Crawford as a leader. You remember when he was a short-haired rookie hitting grand slam in his first game, and now he's this shaggy-haired, bearded fella. He's filled out. His shoulders are broader. He's probably like 15 pounds heavier at this point. It's just he's a different man, and like you said, the body broke down. So, I could see Brandon getting the Willie Mack for that reason. But if I had a vote, I'd probably vote for Wilmer again, or even Tyro, or Alex Cobb. Alex Cobb's a good possibility, I think. I mean, this is the year of firsts for him. So it's entirely possible. And he seems to like being a Giant. I don't know if that he's bought into Farhan's system necessarily, but Cobb just in general seems to like being a Giant. He seems to like the atmosphere around it. So I could see one of those guys going. Yeah, I could see one of those guys. We'll find out a week from today. It's Friday, September 22nd now. Next Friday will be the Willie Mack Award, as it always is on the final Friday of the season, and we'll find out then. So just something I thought we'd poke around about, because it's interesting this year. There's no standout. Like last year, we all kind of figured it would be Wilmer because he had that kind of a year when the Giants struggled. But here we are with the carbon copy of last year. So can we give it to the same guy who didn't struggle? I don't know. So it should make for interesting. It should make for an interesting Friday night next week.
Yeah, one little anecdote I wanted to share. When I went to that Sunday night baseball game against the Braves 3 or 4 weeks ago, Crawford was on his third stint on the IL then, but he was still taking ground balls in the outfield or in the sidelines and, doing his thing. And then I was sitting on the bench writing some notes and checking tweets and doing the thing I do. And to my left about, 10 feet was Alex Pavlovic, and Brandon Crawford comes down the dugout steps and sits by him and is talking with Pavs and one of the groundskeeper guys. I don't know who he was, but he was a groundskeeper guy. And he's all, "You guys like," this is Brandon Crawford, "Do you guys like cotton candy?" And they're like, "I don't know. I mean, it's okay." He's like, "That flavor is the worst, man. And they're flavoring it in everything now." And he goes on this whole riff about cotton candy, the flavor. And all three of them start having a debate for 5 minutes on the merits of the flavor cotton candy. And it was the most hilarious conversation to overhear. It was fantastic. Because, of course, Pavs is a foodie, right? He loves to do his food reviews. And so he was totally into it. And the groundskeeper guy was like, "I love cotton candy. What are you talking about, man?" Brandon's like, "Nah, man, it's trash." Stuff like that. It's all cotton candy ice cream, cotton candy jelly beans. It's like, oh, it's just all trash. Oh,
That's funny.
Like, the guy has such a dry wit and sense of humor. And he even joked about it in last night's game or 2 games ago when he was being interviewed. He's all, "Yeah, I haven't really given much thought to retiring or playing, more, and how emotional I get." And he pauses, because he knows he's not known for being very emotional and very kind of even keeled, but he has that dry wit about him. Buster Posey was very similar in that sense, right? Where he never was super excited, super happy, or super down, but they have that funny gene, where you're like, "Wait, what? Oh my God, that was a joke. I almost went over my head." So unfortunately, unlike a Hunter Pence, he is not destined for the broadcast booth, because that would be probably the most dreadfully boring color analyst ever.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but he would. He'd be like, "Yeah, when I was playing shortstop, I would cover second and do this and blah 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 blah." It would probably be putting people to sleep. Oh man, I love the guy though.
He has lived our dream. He's lived every one of our dreams. He grew up
100%.
rooting for a team. He then became the starting shortstop for that team and won titles. I mean, what a dream.
What a freaking career, you know?
Right?
I mean, yeah, he's had the best career that I'm sure he could have ever imagined. Just playing for his childhood team, winning 2 World Series. Playing for whatever, 12 years. It's just 13 years. Just incredible. Incredible run for him. So be sad to see him go if it is indeed his last game on October 1st. But that's the way the cookie crumbles with all these players, right? They get old, they got to retire at some point, and he's 36, so he's no spring chicken. Man, well, that's about it. We don't need to get injuries or anything like that other than Crawford, because the season's basically over.
I'd like to be 36 again, though, and try that again, because my body is definitely worse off at 44 than it was at 36.
Yeah, I want to lean over to Brandon one day and go, "You think 36 is bad?"
Right. Try getting to your 40s, buddy. Oh, he'll be there soon.
Yeah, I'm turning the big 5-0 this year, so it's like,
we'll definitely get him his.
We'll
definitely get Crawford his flowers in the offseason if he retires. Well, we'll 100% to make sure to get Willie on here too, because that'll be a nice memory reliving moment. So we will definitely set up something where we can talk about the career of Brandon Crawford if that's it this offseason. Like Chad said, there's possibility for more, but if that's it, that's it. So, that's what we have to look forward to at this point. The season's over. Hopefully we weren't too Debbie Downer for people, but this is the reality. And if you're listening to our podcast during this stretch of baseball for the Giants, God bless you, because you are a hardcore Giants fan, and we appreciate it, because it is tough right now to be a Giants fan. It really, really is. So, I'd love to say hang in there. There's brighter events on the horizon, but who the hell knows, really? So just like you, I'm curious to see what happens. Right. So I'm just as curious as everybody here listening to see what happens, and I appreciate that they're just as interested in Giants baseball as we are.
That's awesome, man. All right. Well, the Giants have 3 more in Los Angeles. That'll conclude their road portion of the season, which of course we talked about.
Thank God.
Thank God. Then they got 3 versus the Padres, and I'm just saying, don't look down. The Padres have won 7 in a row. We didn't even talk about that. They're only 1 game behind the Giants, and so the Giants are in real danger of being surpassed by the Padres and finishing 4th in the National League West. And I did not think that was going to happen a couple of weeks ago. I will say that.
I did.
That's really frustrating. Yeah, you did. You called it. I know.
I'm not even. I got notes. I sent it. I found it in my group chat. On like August 16th, I sent a message to my group chat. You guys know the Padres are going to finish with more wins than the Giants, right? So that was almost a month and a half ago. I was going to search Twitter right now to see if I publicly said it too. It's just unbelievable how I didn't think the Giants would be this bad, but
No.
It's just,
I think the only way the Giants prevent this is, of course, you have to win 2 out of 3 against San Diego, and we don't even know how the other games are going to calculate into that math. But clearly you have to take 2 out of 3 from the Padres to even try to have a chance to finish ahead of them, because they're only 1 game back with 9 to play. So, that's a lot of room for the Padres. I don't like the national media going, "Oh, the Padres have won 7 in a row. They have a chance at this thing." And I'm like, but they're still a game back of the Giants, and you're saying the Giants are dead. Like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, what? These guys are going to go past 4 teams. Anyway,
fake momentum. It's all about the fake momentum.
Yeah, fake momentum and clickbait. I don't know. It's kind of funny. But yeah, 3 against the Dodgers in Chavez Ravine, 3 against the Padres at home, and then 3 against the Dodgers.
Quick question for you then, since this probably it for us in the regular season. I don't know. We'll talk about that off air. So who makes the playoffs? Who out of the National League gets it in this dogfight? And then on the American League side, you've got Houston, Seattle, and Texas fighting for that AL West. And one of them, because you throw Toronto in the mix, one of them is going to get edged out of a wild card spot possibly. So who makes it? Who between Cincy and Chicago and Miami makes it. So what do you? I think the Cubs sneak in, and I think it's Phillies, Diamondbacks, Cubs.
That's
What's
exactly
going
who
on
I
right
think.
now?
That's exactly what I think. I mean, the Cubs hit a wall recently, so I think they're going to recover. They're going to play better than the Marlins. Cincinnati's on the outside looking in. Not that they couldn't do it, but I think the Cubs are a better team than them. So I do think it's going to be Philly, Arizona, and Chicago in the wild card there. Chicago is threatening Milwaukee a little bit for the central lead, but they've kind of dwindled out of that. So that's not going to happen anymore. Milwaukee's got 87 wins now, and Chicago's got 79. So they're quite far back there. As far as the American League is concerned, our friend Bruce Bochy over in Texas, they were riding high for so many months, and they've had a lot of problems too. Not as bad as the Giants, but at one point they had lost like 7 in a row and like 12 out of 15 and all that, and they kind of plummeted in the standings. They've done a little bit better recently. They are tied with Seattle right now for the wild card, and of course both of them are only a half game back of Houston for the West. So you got all three teams fighting for the West, number one, and then the remaining two will be fighting for the wild card, whoever it may be. And like you just said, one of them could get bumped out. Texas being one of them, right? So you could see all this praise and adoration for Bruce Bochy going, oh my God, they got the best record in all of Major League Baseball. This is like back in July, right? To potentially missing the playoffs. I think that's crazy. That's crazy. Because right now you have Tampa Bay. They've already secured a spot. They're 9 games up. They already clinched a wild card spot. You have Toronto, and they're only a half game up on Seattle and Texas. And, of course, that's the same record as the Astros. I don't know. What's your take on it? I guess out of those, it's a tough one to call. I just don't – I would put my money on Toronto actually getting bumped, even though they have a half-game edge right now. I think Toronto's going to get bumped, and that all the West teams are going to make it.
That'd be fun if that happens. I think Seattle gets bumped. I think Toronto squeezes in there. I think Houston takes the division and Texas finishes second in that division. It's crazy that all these teams we talked about all have a better record than Minnesota, who's going to win the Central. But that's very true. That's how bad their team is. It's fascinating though. No 3 teams have ever been this close with this short of the season left. There was one year that the Giants, the Dodgers, and I think it was the D-backs were all within a game of each other with or 2 games of each other with 3 to play. But this is a half game with 9, 10 games to play. So really, the West is fascinating.
And Texas and Seattle play each other this weekend. That's a huge series.
Right.
And then Toronto plays Tampa Bay. So we'll see if Tampa Bay has anything to play for. You know what I'm saying? They're still chasing Baltimore. They're only a game and a half behind Baltimore. So
and Baltimore has a chance at 100.
Yeah. So, Tampa Bay is not going to lay down for the Blue Jays. They're trying to still get the division. So, I could see Toronto. That's why they got these 3 against Tampa Bay. If things go poorly for them, they might get bumped out. Because Seattle and Texas are just going to swap wins and losses, right? They both can't lose all 3 games. So, that's where Toronto's at that slight disadvantage there, I'd say. But we'll see. I don't know. That's baseball. That's why they play the game, because we had no idea the Giants were going to go 5-26 on the road, and yet here they are. So,
but according to Austin Slater,
5-27. Sorry,
average out.
5-27 now. Sorry, after last night's loss.
Oh, don't worry. It's going to average out. Austin Slater said so.
9 games to average out. 9 games to average out. No worries.
I think he forgot that part.
Yeah, he forgot the part there where their sample size is running out.
Right? Great. Over the long term, it's all going to average out. Too bad we don't play 500 games in the season, Austin.
It's going to average out through the year 2029, Eric. Okay?
Exactly.
It's going to be fine. That's the long term averaging out.
Right?
All right. Well, that's going to do it for episode 289. Thanks for listening. Like Eric said, obviously, whoever's listening right now probably causes harm to their own body. So we appreciate you coming in and taking a listen to Giants fans. I don't think we were negative. I do think we were realistic, but still, had some good points about Kapler and all that. So, look, we'll do the postmortem in a future show. Yeah, most likely the next show is going to be after the conclusion of the regular season. Then we'll get into the hot stove and, of course, talking about the playoffs. And we'll go from there. You can follow us individually on X, Twitter, whatever the hell it's called, at ChadK21 for myself, at 2OutHits for Eric. That's with the number 2, or collectively at TortureCast. You can find everything wherever you listen to your podcasts, and we do have a website, torturecast.com, and go over and like us on Facebook where we post all of our content. That's all I got, Eric. Or you got anything?
Nope. Giants Chatter on Facebook. Come join us. Be miserable in the offseason.
There you go. Hey, all right. Well, I got Niners to look forward to. You don't have the Bears to look forward to. We'll see you next time.
I got nothing, man. I got nothing.
You got
the
nothing,
Bulls
Eric.
suck.
Sorry, buddy.
The Bulls suck. The Blackhawks had the first pick. I'm so glad I became a Vegas Knights fan, because without that title this year, I would literally
That's
be
true.
in the sports desert, not just literally
Yeah.
be in the desert.
All right, well, go Niners. Maybe not the Bears, although now I'm a Cal Bears fan with my daughter going to Berkeley. We went to a Cal football game last weekend. That was actually a lot of fun. But until then, we'll see you at the end of this painful end to this San Francisco Giants 2023 campaign. But until then, have a great week, and we'll see you then. Boom.
A big thank you to everybody for listening to the Torture Cast, the podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants. Follow us on Twitter at TortureCast. You can also like us on Facebook or check out our blog at torturecast.com. I also want to say thank you to Ashcon and Bailey for letting us use their song Feeling Like a Giant for our intro. For Ben Lee and Chad King, my name is Willie Dills saying, we'll see you next time.
Well, Willard was dead on. That's the same shit we've been saying. I mean, it's just fucking ridiculous that this team is just so pathetic. They're not good at anything. They don't do anything well. You know, he's right. We all know something that we do well, and you cannot point at one particular fucking thing that this fucking team does fucking well. Sorry, I saved all my fucks for after the show.